This is how ZBrush looks when you first open it up. I'm in ZBrush 4R7, and to many new users it may seem a little overwhelming looking at all of the subpalettes and all the options that you see right in front of you. But I want you to bear in mind that what you're looking at here is everything pretty much in one room. Many applications, much like Cinema 4D, Modo, even 3D Coat, do operations in different rooms. So it can kind of simplify some of the UI because the tools are specific to the tasks that you're going to be doing. One of the things within ZBrush is that it works primarily in just one single screen, one room. So it may be that you're looking at the UI and you're thinking, boy, do I have to learn all of this to do some simple things? And the quick answer to that is no. I don't even use half the features within ZBrush. So what I'm going to show you today is the basics that you really need just to get on with sculpting. The first thing that you'll notice is this panel down below here, and this is open by default when you open ZBrush, and it kind of just allows you to get on to start a new project. You've got all of these menus here, so the projects, these are projects that are kind of already made for you to have a little play with. You've got all of these spheres here which are to allow you just to get on with sculpting straight away. You've got tools, and tools are actually named in ZBrush, but really they're just meshes. And these meshes are primarily OBJ files is what's going to be brought into ZBrush, and here's some ones that come with it. So you can sort of select one of these figures here, or ball, sphere, and they're all polygon meshes. To the next here, you've got a variety of different brushes, and these are folders, and you don't have to go to here to get to your brushes. This is just giving you a access to more brushes than you may even see within the application by default. There's tons and tons of brushes, but guess what? I only use about 10, 12 brushes out of hundreds of them. This is because I found the ones that work for me well and the ones that are really essential to the task that I'm going to be doing, which is sculpting. You've got a host of textures in here that you can use straight away. So the idea of this area here, which is called the Lightbox, is you just get access to the assets that come with ZBrush. And this goes for loads of areas like textures, alphas, materials. So you can sort of go through these and then choose ones that are not necessarily found directly within the UI. The first thing I do when I get into here is I just hide it. And if I ever wanted to bring it back up again, I just go to the top left where it says Lightbox, and it comes back up again. This is handy if you want to access some other assets that are not primarily found within the UI. In other words, they're not found in here or anywhere else other than in here, shall I say. So what about just getting around ZBrush? What is it we really do need to know about ZBrush? Well, primarily we've got palettes on the left hand side and a palette on the right hand side, and we've got all of our options found at the top, and a lot of these options found at the top you're not even going to be touching for the first few hours at least, or even a few days, because they're going off into different areas of what ZBrush can do. I'm going to be concentrating on sculpting. So with that said, what do we need to know about getting around ZBrush? Well, first of all, I'm just going to bring in a primitive object, and I'll show you how to do this later on, but I'm just going to bring it in just so that you can see how we can navigate around ZBrush. And I'm going to show you this process that I'm doing now later. Primarily, when you've got your primitive object in here, and that can be a primitive object or it can be a normal 3D mesh, polygon mesh, you just click anywhere outside the model and you're rotating around it. If you hold the shift key, it quickly locks it to a specific axis. So for instance, if you're close to the front and you press the shift key, it will lock it there. The same thing for working from the top and the bottom and the side. This in essence allows you to work in one 3D window and work in a way that you don't have to have separate orthographic views, i.e. front, side, back. You can just quickly lock to those. In addition to this, when you're first working in ZBrush like this, you'll notice that there's no perspective on the object, and this is because the perspective by default is turned off. The perspective is found on the right hand side where you can turn it on, and it's called the dynamic perspective, and basically when you turn this on you've got perspective. Of course you can change the perspective settings, but I'm not going to go into them just yet. Let's just turn these off. So the navigation that I'm going to be showing you is obviously you can rotate around the object. If you hold down the Alt key, you can pan the object. And for zooming in and out, I tend to just go to the right here and use the scale, although there is a shortcut alternative. So we pan, we rotate, and I just tend to go to the scale there. But there is a shortcut alternative. I just can't remember it off the top of my head now because I don't really use it. But all of these options here, move, scale and rotate, can be found down to the right hand side. Pretty simple stuff. If you ever want to see the polygon frame, you don't have to go up into any of these options above here. You can just simply click on the button and it shows you the wires for this. You've also got the option to show transparency, in which will work when you've actually got other objects in the scene, which are also called subtools. So all you got to remember is that a tool in ZBrush is essentially a 3D piece of geometry. Now up to this point you can see that I've brought in this primitive object. This primitive object is a very basic object, and by default it's pretty much like a primitive object that you would see in other 3D applications, where you can't do any polygon editing to it, but you can initially set things up. So for instance, this primitive object was selected from here and it's within our tool menu. Just click on here and you've got a various selection of primitive objects. You can see here we can just click on these and change these to any one that we want. Now at the moment, because these are a 3D primitive objects, it doesn't allow you to work on a polygon, vertice or face basis. What you can do with these initially is you can go to the initialize, which is right down the bottom right, and you can set this alignment, you can set the offset and its scale, etc. Bearing in mind you can turn on the polyframe so you can see how many segments that you're actually adding. Once you're happy with your primitive and you've got the basic setup that you want, you then turn it into an editable 3D polygon mesh. And that's found in the top right hand corner under the tools menu, as you can see here, make polygon 3D mesh. It's now become a 3D polygon object. When you're zooming out from an object and zooming back in, it's actually called the scale. This is because we're actually moving the object further and closer to the screen here. If we ever wanted to frame it, we just click on the F key or the frame button and it brings it to the full focus in our view. And that's really it. That's really the basics of getting around within the viewport, at least, so that we can rotate, scale, and bearing in mind that we're not rotating and scaling the actual object itself, we are just merely rotating from a camera's point of view, scaling and moving. This is not affecting the placement, the scale or the rotation of the actual object geometry itself. only to how it appears to the camera view.